Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Create.Play.Live podcast. I am your host, Nanette Saylor, and I am so grateful to be here today with all of you and with my very special guest, CeCe Espeut. She is a veteran, she is a speaker, she is an author, and she is a photographer. So like many of our guests, she wears lots of creative hats, and I can't wait for you to hear all about how it is that she's serving in the world today, and hopefully a little few stories about how she got to this space. So welcome, CeCe. Please say hello to everyone and tell us what you're up to.
Well, hi, Nanette. Hi, everyone. And thank you for having me. This is just such an honor to be a part of this podcast, so thank you.
I am so glad you're here. We are all about creating, playing, and living, and I know that you have spent a lot of time in your life doing all three. So I'm going to let you pick which you would like to talk about first, and let's see where it takes us.
Okay, definitely. Well, I am a photographer, and I think I have like the best job in the world. I get to meet different people, experience different cultures, and so I never know what I'm going to be doing one day to the next, and I'm just living a fantastic life right now.
Isn't that fun? And so you do a little bit of everything in the photographic genre, don't you?
Yes.
You're not just a wedding photographer or just I know a couple people who do food photography, for example. Yeah, tell us what's one of the things that you have had the most fun photographing recently?
Okay, so primarily I am a headshot photographer. I do professional headshots, and I specialize in authors and speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And the joke is that, I'm sure everyone's heard the saying, if you have 9 broke friends, you'll be the 10th. Well, if you have 9 friends that are speakers or authors, you'll be the 10th.
Yeah.
So after talking with them and having them tell me, CeCe, you need to speak, you need to write a book, I wrote a book and I've started speaking.
Yeah.
And so everybody would think that I would be speaking about photography, but photography doesn't even come into it at all.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I love that story shows us how when you step into taking action in something that it is that you love to do, that new things open up, right? New possibilities open up that you never would have expected. When you started out just to be a photographer, I imagine that it never crossed your mind that you might be an author. And right. And because the people that you were photographing turned out to often be authors and speakers, then that door opened for you, which I think is super cool. So tell us a little bit about, first, what's it like the day in a life of a speaker author that you are photographing?
So a day in the life of somebody that I'm photographing, and it really depends. So if they're going to be on stage, first of all, they're a bundle of nerves. They are nervous, and even though they're not nervous about being on stage, because I know there's a quote out there about, people, their worst nightmare is to do public speaking, but that's actually not true, because when you know what you're going to say and you've practiced, that's not what you're nervous about. You might be nervous about tripping as you're walking on stage or, something crazy, but you're not actually nervous about what you're going to say because you know it. You've practiced. That's what you're there for. Yeah. So I would say they're probably very nervous. They probably have not eaten. They probably got like huge amounts of energy going. And then they get into the groove, they tap into that zone, they get on stage, and they just fly.
Yeah. Yeah. And there you are, capturing some of that. Yeah. Very exciting. Very exciting. And so when was it that you first knew that you had a talent for photography?
You know, I think I was actually born with a camera in my hand.
Oh.
I know that may sound really crazy, but around the time I was 16, I was going through some old stuff for my parents, and I found a picture of myself and my cousin Jenny. Now, I must have been about 18 months at the time,
Mm.
and the photographer, his name was Sid Grant, he actually signed his name at the bottom of the picture. And I was just like, wow, can you imagine all these years later, I'm finding this picture. And it brought me such joy. And I was like, I'd like to be somebody like that who just brings people incredible joy, even when I'm not there.
Nice. And so that's interesting that you were drawn to the idea that his signature was on it, not just that the picture was there, because, it's funny. I've seen lots of old photos that I imagine, in fact, now that I think about it, I'm sure there are a couple that have a photographer's stamp or a photographer's signature on it. Never crossed my mind to be concerned about that or to even think anything of it other than what the picture was capturing. So I think it's interesting how it is that our different experiences lead us down these paths. So did you study photography in school? Did you just begin playing with a camera? How did you get to the place where you said, this is interesting enough for me to really dive in?
Well, right then and there, I started taking pictures. And I didn't actually go to school for photography until maybe I was in my 30s, maybe in my 40s, right around the time where we switched from film to digital.
Okay.
So I had been a photographer for many, 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 many years before I actually went to school for it. And, crazy, and this might be a little off topic, but that was the reason I ended up getting a divorce.
Oh. Going to school cost you. Okay, well, yeah.
Because my husband and my ex-husband and I had like this huge argument, and he was like, well, why are you going back to school? Because you know so much. And because my schedule changed, I realized that, okay, maybe he wasn't where he was supposed to be when he said he was going to be there. So that just led to my marriage ending. But here's the great thing.
Yeah.
I could have never gone on and done some of the things that I have done since then, and it was just time for that part of my life to be over. So, we're actually really good friends now. In fact, we're better off now as friends than when we were married. So,
you're not the first person to have said that, right? That once we take off the confines, if you will, the definition that we expect our relationship to be when we are formally husband and wife, then oftentimes that releases us to be ourselves, and then we actually like each other better.
We like each other now.
Yeah. Yeah, because you no longer have this big pile of expectations about what this thing is supposed to be. And I think that's so much a part of the why I spend so much of my energy encouraging people to stretch creatively, is because that's the core of what we do, right? Is to release those boundaries, to let ourselves explore. And so it's no surprise to me that while you were exploring, expanding your creative practice of photography, that these other things fell away, right? That they just seem to no longer serve, because it's all part of this bigger energy, which is us up-leveling and us letting go of somebody else's rules, right? Whatever those rules are. So yeah, that's really fun. So what did you learn when you went back to photography school?
I learned that there's a whole new world out there. And boy, let me tell you, I have done things, and I've just experienced people in a whole new way. And this idea of there's like no judgment. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I had a couple that they were getting married, and they told me that they were not going to exchange rings. They were going to exchange sneakers.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, little old me as a wedding photographer, I do love weddings, but I started to, in my mind, get a little judgmental.
Sure.
So, sneakers are going to be, old in 5 years. They're going to have dry rot. I was going through all of these things.
Yeah.
But then come to find out that they designed socks. And so one designed socks, the other one designed sneakers, which I don't know. I didn't even realize that was like a job, like people get paid to design sneakers and socks. I'm like, really? I thought you just went to the store and bought them. I didn't realize that every so often new sneakers came out.
Right.
So that was, when I realized that, I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, for them, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, for them. And they were professional soccer players. So why would they need rings?
Yeah.
Those sneakers actually made a lot more sense. So, just learning not to be so judgmental, find out the reason why people do what they do. And, you get some funny stories out of it.
It's an interesting expose, isn't it? I bet if you were to take all of the pictures you've taken over the years and plaster them all over a wall, and begin to connect the dots of the stories, right? That there would be some fascinating things that you discover, right? That little breadcrumbs of little nuances of how these circles intersect, and very interesting. So tell us a little bit about that. When you were in that space of seeing people that you were taking photographs of, and they were on stage, and you were experiencing all of that, and you're beginning to get this sense that this is something you might want to do. Talk to us about that space.
So this is a crazy story. And anytime I start to get judgmental or a little irritated, I have this thing where I literally lean back and just open myself. So I'm at this event, and the organizer, she's just way over the top. I mean, I can't begin to even tell you how much over the top she is. And I step out of the room to take a break, and different people are saying different things. The event really was not going well, right? And so people are coming to me and they're saying like, oh, CeCe this, that. And I'm like, hey, listen, I personally have never put on an event. Never. I don't know what it takes to put on an event. All I know is I'm hired to do the pictures.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So no judgment. I cannot.
Yeah.
I cannot make any comments. I don't know why she did what she did or anything like that. So I step out of the room. I take a break. And when I step back into the room, she was on stage and she was saying, we all have a story to tell that will help somebody else.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, okay. I've made some mistakes. Maybe some stuff that I've done could help some people. And then she went on to say that, hey, you can get paid for it. And I was like, oh, really? I want to be a speaker. And that was the first inkling that I had that maybe some stuff that had gone on in my life that I could actually help some people with. So just leaning back,
Yes.
getting rid of the judgment,
Yeah.
just being open. And that's
Yeah.
how it really started.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it interesting that in an environment, in an event where all things seem to not be, clicking on all cylinders, where things aren't going well, that this very special golden nugget just appeared for you, and that because you had been in that space of leaning back and saying, you know what, let me just be open, you were there to receive it. Right? Beautiful. Yeah, it's one of those things I'll never forget. Back in the days when I was a hotel manager, one of our vice presidents of one of the companies that I worked for, he told us all when we were going to our first big international conference, he said, listen, he said, there's going to be a lot that happens over the course of these next 4 days. You are going to get inundated with all kinds of information. Some of it's going to be interesting. Some of it's going to be horribly boring. He said, here's the thing. I want you to set an intention, which is simply to come away with one thing. One thing, just one. Everybody likes to go to these big events and have this long, long laundry list of all this stuff. Just look for just be open to the one thing that is your biggest takeaway. And that has served me so well over the years, because it's easy to get overwhelmed and it's easy to get caught up in all the noise of all that's going on. If you've got a room, especially if you've got a room of 300 women together for 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
It can get a little crazy, right? So yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Just take a breath, just back up a little bit, and then just say, you know what, let me go back in with this new awareness and just be open to receive. Yeah, and so you had a story to tell.
Yeah.
That story is now in a book.
It is.
And that story is now being told from stage.
Right.
And that story is now taking you to TEDx. Tell us all about that journey, please, because I am so happy for you to see this happen. I know it's been a number of years in the making, and I think it's really powerful for people listening to recognize that, one, it starts just with this little ember, right? This little thought. And then you let that thing smolder, right? And then at some point you start to put a little fuel on the fire.
Yes. So back in 2014, my best friend, Cassie Eubank, and I were down in the Keys, and we're talking about what do we want. So we're like, oh, we'd love to do a TEDx. And so we're like, okay, how do we get on stage?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was Cassie or if it was myself. We were like, okay, let's volunteer. I Googled it, and it just so happens that TEDx Boca was having their event within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's so funny because that's how it happened for me, that I ended up involved. I was like, let me just go. I had this idea. I want to be involved in TEDx somehow. Let me just Google it. Oh, next week.
Yeah. So I'll never forget, I friended the organizer on Facebook, and I said, listen, if you need anybody to do anything, let me know.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, contact this person, yada, yada, yada. Next thing you know, Cassie and I are there, and we are putting together the ID badges.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me tell you, it was fun, but we were there from like 8 o'clock in the morning till, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, standing, just doing this stuff. But it was just so exciting.
Yeah.
The next day we go back and we finish up, and we got to watch TEDx. Now, I had never been to an event before. I'd only watched talks on the internet. We were there, and it was just so empowering.
Yeah.
That was great. The next year, I volunteered again. And then they realized that I was a photographer.
Oops.
So the next year, they had me come back. I just did some light photography for them. That was it. Next year, I didn't do anything. Well, I had set the intention that I wanted to be on stage. And at one point, Cassie and I ran up on stage, and we stood behind the TEDx sign and took a picture of each other. That picture has been on Facebook forever. And so people already thought I was part of TEDx. I wasn't. I was just stuffing ID cards.
Right. Well, and you were a part of TEDx. You were a speaker on the stage yet, but you were a part. You were connected. You were calling that in. Yeah.
I have 2 T-shirts to prove I was at TEDx.
Yes.
And then last year, I applied. The cutoff was in December. The event is this October. So I applied, and it was like late January. It was a Sunday evening, and my phone rings, and I don't recognize the number. But now so I'm going to get really real with you now. It was the end of the month. I knew all my bills were paid. I thought it was a bill collector. So I have a little attitude. I'm like, hello. My speech was already, it's Sunday evening.
What are you bothering me for?
You're supposed to call me on a Sunday evening after 8 o'clock. And the guy says, hello, this is Eric from TEDx. I was speechless.
I'm sure.
And I was so glad that I didn't come off with, he was a bill collector, because that really was not the image that I wanted to portray,
Yes.
And so the rest is history.
And so you will be speaking in October on the stage at TEDx Boca Raton.
Yes. October 12th. October 12th.
Yes. Very, very exciting. Very, very exciting. So what do you have to do to prep for that?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of prep that's involved. First of all, they give us a theme, and the theme is reinventing yourself through innovation.
There you go.
All right, so I was like, okay, that kind of works for me, because I've made mistakes in the past. But they give us speaking coaches, always practicing. They have us doing several different appearances, and just kind of talking about what are we going to be talking about. So
yeah, very fun. Very fun. And you've been speaking in other places too. So as a speaker, you tell us about what that looks like. So when your book came out, you hit the road, so to speak, to talk about the book, and so I'm going to imagine that you had your typical speech, if you will, that was the speech that went along with the book. And now that you've been doing that for a little while, I imagine there's now some spin-off side stories and other things. Yes. So talk to us a little bit about how it is that you take this content that is in your book and then chill it all down. I know I've done some speaking. Sometimes you've got 20 minutes, sometimes you've got 45 minutes, sometimes you've got 2 sessions you can speak in. Always there's the need to somehow tailor it to meet an audience, right? So that they come away with a takeaway that's relevant to them. Talk to us a little bit about what that all looks and sounds like, because it's one thing to do it periodically. It's another to do it, if you don't mind me sharing, you were saying you would like to be on 30 podcasts in 30 days, right? That's a lot of talking. and a lot of, and so do you feel like you have to prepare for that? Do you just kind of go with it? At this point, you've been doing it for a couple of years. Do you have all the content you need? Is there, I don't know. Tell us what that looks like.
All right. So I've actually been speaking since 2010.
Okay.
And normally I go into drug rehabs, jails, prisons, halfway houses, and I speak. And the joke is I have basically a captive audience. They
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, they have to be there. So many different.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to walk out and boo.
No, they are not. So I had a really great opportunity to practice my speaking and what have you. When I first started my journey, I was writing my story. You know, the I'm home, now what? That was the original name of my book. And in talking to people, I realized that people were mixing terms up and they weren't getting it right. And so then I had to write what ended up being the first book, which is the Florida Clemency Guide. So
Okay.
it's specific to Florida.
Okay.
The Clemency Guide is how to get your criminal record sealed, expunged, or pardoned.
Okay.
So that's why I was talking to people that were in jails and prisons and drug rehabs. And everybody thought initially that, hey, I had a family member or somebody close to me that was in that situation.
Yeah.
But actually, no, it was me. I always say I'm a former inmate, and people go like, what?
Yeah.
What did you say, playmate? And I go like, no,
No.
former inmate.
Yeah, that orange is the new black thing. That.
Yes. that was me.
Yeah.
It's a once in a lifetime experience. Cross it off my bucket list. Don't ever need to experience that again.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of once you make a mistake, once you make a bad decision, once life hands you lemons, what do you do? And yes, I might have been in a physical prison, but sometimes we're in mental prisons, or sickness, what have you. So it's like, what do you do when you're in that situation? When you're coming out of that situation, like what decisions do you make? How do you live your life?
Yeah.
And that's basically what I do now is I go and I usually speak at least 45 minutes. I've spoken as long as 2 hours. We start talking about it. And then I just open up the floor and I say, listen, I could tell you, give you stats and all kinds of things, but why don't you ask me your questions and I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you what really happens when you apply for, to get your record sealed, pardoned, or expunged.
Right.
What
Right.
does that all mean? Because here's the thing. Okay, let me make sure I get this right. 1 out of every 3 Americans has an arrest or criminal record.
Wow.
Yeah. So that means if it's not you, you can literally look to the person, look at your left.
Yes.
Or to your right, left, right. Yeah. And one of the 3 of you has been arrested and thrown into prison.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting statistic. And for people who don't have any exposure to that world, it seems so foreign. And yet, as you say, the percentage of people who do have exposure to it is really high. I know in my world, there are plenty of people who have had experiences with either arrest or they have a formal criminal record. They've done time. And that's, and people look at me and say, how can that be true for you? Now, it wasn't for me directly, but it's for direct family members, and people say, how can that be your truth? Well, it is. It is my truth. And I think it's so powerful when somebody like you can come forward after all those years, because it was how many years since that was true for you before you stepped out on stage or stepped out at all to tell somebody?
So actually, it was quite a number of years before I actually stepped out. I came home in 1999, and
Okay.
it was 2010 when I
Yeah.
actually got on stage and just went public.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Big, big, big. And
Mhm.
look at all the good that's coming from that. I imagine you've got incredible stories of people who have used the information in your book, used the information you've presented when you're speaking, and have then gone forward to do what you were able to do. So tell us again the a formal name of your book. So, and it'll be in the show notes for everybody listening. But I want to make sure that we get that right.
Okay, so it's the Florida Clemency Guide, and clemency is CLEMENCY.
Okay, great.
The Florida Clemency Guide. And here's the thing, every state is different,
Yes,
which is ridiculous.
of
That
course.
alone is ridiculous. We should have one system in America to get your voting rights back. But and
Yeah.
mainly that's when you get your record sealed, expunged, or pardoned. What you're really doing is getting your civil rights back,
Yeah.
meaning the right to sit on a jury, the right to hold public office, and the right
Mhm.
to vote.
Yeah.
Should be
Yeah, and you know, most people don't have any idea that if you have a criminal record, you can't do any of those things.
right. Mhm.
And, you know, everybody assumes that anybody who's here in America can vote. And, well, it's just not true.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned, just for clarity's sake, you mentioned there's another book? Yes.
All right. All right. Yeah, there's another book. My publicist actually wanted it like months ago. I'm still writing it. And
Okay.
that book is called I'm Home, Now What? And it's
Okay.
the idea that when you come home, now what? What
Yeah.
happened? Right?
Yeah.
Because the Florida Clemency Guide actually gave the definitions according to Florida law. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, having your record expunged here in Florida is not the same as in Georgia or New
Right.
York. So really the Florida Clemency Guide just gave it according to Florida. How does it go?
Right.
This next book, I'm Home, Now What, is going to be my personal story.
Yeah.
And the way this even came about was I have what I think is like the most gorgeous grandson.
Aw.
And when he was getting close to 16 and he was going to be driving, I didn't want him to be out there and somebody say to him, "Oh, your granny went to prison."
Right.
Right? So I figured, hey, I better tell him before somebody else told him.
Yeah.
So right? I wrote like a one-page letter. I have a friend who's a psychologist, and I said, hey, can you read this?
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm not going to damage this kid,
Right.
have him in therapy. And he said, CeCe, there's so much more to your story.
Yeah.
And he gave it back to me, and he said, write more. And so.
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, so that gives us a lot to talk about, the whole book writing process.
Mhm.
So isn't that interesting? So this creative energy that fueled that spark of a photographer that then, took you in all these directions and took you to a place where somebody said, gave you the hint that there was a story to be told, and then you start to follow that, and it becomes a guide for people who have an experience like you had. And now there's this next layer, which is, okay, let me go a little deeper and tell my own story in a way that will make this very human for people. And so back to the drawing board you go, or back to the writing board you go. I now host a weekly group I call it the Content Creation Club because I don't want to couch it as only people writing books, but mostly people are there to write, to put their message on paper. And some people are turning that message into vlogs, video scripts. Some people are turning that message into weekly emails. And some people are turning that message into a book. So talk to us a little bit about, because you said your publicist is waiting. Talk to us a little bit about what that process is like for you. Have you set a goal for a number of words? How does this all evolve?
Okay, for me, I have a goal to write 400 words a day.
Okay.
Right? So before I check email, get on Facebook, talk to any friends, 400 words a day.
Okay.
Some days.
And 400 words is a couple paragraphs.
Yeah, it's just like one page.
One page. Okay.
Some days, all I can do is the page number.
Yeah. Well, it's like I also facilitate Artist Way creative clusters, and I'm a practicer of morning pages. And technically, morning pages are 3 pages longhand. But, we all know, those of us who practice it, I'm sure there are people listening, there are some days that those 3 pages are just not happening. And we also know we open the book the next day. Right? We open the book the next day and you start and you just,
I find that the way I go to sleep the night before determines how I write.
Now that's an interesting tip. So is there anything you've started to do to help you go to sleep in a way that makes the writing easier?
Oh, absolutely. If I watch a crazy show at night, if I leave the TV on, I'm going to wake up and my heart is racing.
Ah, interesting.
My heart is racing. So I've learned not to do that.
Yeah.
If I go to bed and I meditate and I pray before I go to sleep, I don't want to say I think happy thoughts, but if I get myself in that zone, then when I wake up with ideas, and the day's a lot smoother, the writing's a lot easier. So and no spicy foods before I go to bed, none.
That's funny. Yeah, and so I hear you saying definitively you write in the morning. Yeah. It's interesting. Of the people I speak to, it's a split camp for sure. There are some people who write at night, some people who write in the morning. I'm a morning writer, again, from The Artist Way and Julia Cameron. The idea is, and I feel this experience to be true, that I kind of slide out of that dream state into the writing. And I've even experimented with not even brushing my teeth before I open the page, because anything that interrupts me flowing from that kind of calm of, and again, I love the point that you're making, that going to bed calm, we wake calm, right? As opposed to going to bed agitated or going to bed all keyed up. And then sliding into that zone of sitting down and writing. You write by hand or do you type?
I use a microphone.
There you go. Thank you for sharing that, because I have been saying for years to my clients who are struggling with writing, guys, and of course now it's super easy. 5 years ago wasn't quite as easy, back in the days of Dragon Dictation or whatever those softwares were, but it was possible. Now, any device we have has a microphone on it that will, just speak it. Yes.
Because the thing is, we all can speak much faster than we write, and we know the stuff that's in our head.
Yes.
We know it. So if we're driving, stuck in traffic, waiting for the kids, just, hey, knock out a chapter or 2, knock out a scene in the book. And it's just, at least get the outline.
Yes.
And it's so much easier that way.
So then those notes, so is it a speak to text, or does it have to be, it's speak to text?
Yes, I either use speak to text or I have a MacBook Pro,
Yeah,
and I just, plug in my headset and tap
off
that
you go.
twice and just start speaking.
Yeah. So then from there, it requires a little bit of massaging and some editing, of course, right?
Right.
And then are you self-publishing, or you're working with a publisher?
No, self-publishing,
Yeah.
self-publishing.
Yeah. And that I understand that that gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of timing and things like
Mhm.
that, right? Yeah.
Except for my publicist, who now that she's hearing this, she will probably be on the phone like, CeCe, just
Yes.
speak that book into being.
Yes, exactly. Let's get it done.
Right, right.
Let's get it done. That's great. Yeah. And, as with you standing there on the TED stage, I imagine that you've got a vision of that book finished.
Well, and so here's the funny thing. When I write, I design the cover first.
Mm,
I
okay.
might not have the title, but I design how I want the cover to look,
Yeah.
and then I write the book. So, being a
Mm.
visual person, yeah, that's the way it works for me. And I have a friend who she was really, really stuck with her book. She's like, I'm having writer's block. I can't figure this out. So I told her what I did.
Mhm.
I said, let's just get a cover. You're going to self-publish. Let's
Yeah.
see how the book feels.
Yes.
All right. And this is crazy how this particular situation worked out. She got the book. She loved it. She was just like so in love with her book. She went to her son's school and she was showing his teacher, and then she said, you know what, can I get, and I'll just use the word Johnny, if she
Mhm.
called him Johnny. She's like, can I get some of his stuff that he's written,
Mm.
during the school year? So the teacher is asking her why, and she says, oh, I'm going to put it together in a book and give it to him as a gift, or give it to his grandparents as a gift at Christmas. She and the teacher figured out that all the students in that sixth grade had enough to put together a little book.
Nice.
So they did it for the entire sixth grade.
Wow.
And when it was graduation, each child and each parent was presented with a book.
A
So
real honest to God book.
right, and
Oh,
so
that's so cool.
you had this entire sixth grade class. I don't know, maybe 60 kids,
Yeah.
maybe 70 kids. Each one of them now is an author.
Yeah.
And when she told me that story, I was just like,
Yeah.
from one simple idea,
Yeah.
you've got all these kids now who, if they never do anything else in life,
Yeah.
of course, they will, because now they're so, they know that they can be authors.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow. And so they were crying, their parents were crying, teachers
Oh,
were crying, grandparents were crying. And it was just like,
yeah. Powerful stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, certainly the planting of a seed in that example, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and what's so powerful about that is that it doesn't it doesn't take a lot. With today's technology, it's not hard to do. All it takes is somebody to have the vision,
Mm-hmm.
right? For that little idea to then say, oh, let's see, what would it take? And then somebody to actually walk through the steps,
Right.
right? Of saying, okay, we need to gather up all these things. We need
Mm-hmm.
to put it together. Somebody's going to have to lay it out. And but it's really not that complicated, and it can be done. And what a beautiful thing. And like you say, now there are 60, 70, sixth graders in the world who are officially authors
Yes.
of an actual hard covered book that is
Right.
theirs, that they wrote. It's
Mm-hmm.
super, super cool. And, there's nothing more powerful, I think, than when it is that we acknowledge anyone's personal creation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And and really protect that and recognize it and put it out in the world in a way that they can be super proud of. And it's as you say, it's a lifetime of feeling valued and valuable, and that nobody can take away from you.
Right.
That's so cool. Love that. Love that.
So, it's funny, whereas back in 2010, I was talking about my prison experience.
Yeah.
Now, when I talk, yes, I still talk about that sometimes, and I speak maybe 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
But now I speak to women's groups, what can you do after, to recreate the life you want?
Yes.
Create the life you want,
Yes.
What do you do after divorce? What do you do after the kids have left home? Because
Yes.
the principles are still the same. You have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And you have to work towards it.
Yeah. 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 And you have to be able to see the possibility, right? To see the possibility. That glimmer of hope is so important. And I think that's the thing that fuels, that's that fuel to the fire, right? The idea that, okay, so there's this ember, somebody up there on the stage told me that if I have a story to tell, and we all have a story to tell, that maybe there's something that good could come from that. And then you begin to see more examples of where that's showing up in your life, because now you're looking and you're recognizing, oh, this person is able to do that, and this person is able to do that. And for me, that's the creative process at its best, right? Is this idea that all of us have the capacity to create. And that capacity is only limited by what we dump on top of it, which is this most of the time, right? And all of our life experiences. Once we start to be in the space of saying what else is possible, then we start to see with new eyes, right? We start to hear with new ears. And that experience then brings it attracts these things to us, right? So that I know that you're a big believer in our power to manifest and to bring things into being. So I want to take a little bit and just talk about that, because often I see people who have had a series of things not go the way they planned, and for lack of a better description, right reasons, they're disappointed and dejected and in that space of, well, nothing's working out, so I guess I'm just not even going to try, right? How is it that, what do you think it is that you can attribute your willingness to see the world through new eyes? Because obviously you had an experience that showed you that life could be ugly, right? Yeah, in a way that a lot of us don't ever get to personally experience. And you were able to maintain through that this underlying notion and belief, faith, if you will, that there was more that was possible for you. Right. And I think that's what makes your story so special, and how it is that you can speak of transformation as opposed to simply clemency, right? It's a bigger, broader conversation. So talk to us a little bit, if you would, please, about where did that little ember come from, that little glimmer of hope that was obviously still hanging out in there while you were having this icky experience?
Well, it's very funny because you mentioned the word, is it possible?
Yeah.
And my name is CeCe Espeut. CeCe meaning yes, yes in Spanish. That's not how it's spelled, but it means in Spanish, my name means yes, yes.
Yeah.
My last name, Espeut, well, it's pronounced Espeut. In French, comes from it's possible.
Yeah.
So my name is Yes, Yes,
It's possible. Yeah.
So my birthright,
Yeah.
it's possible.
Yes, yes, it's possible. Yes.
And last year, or I think a couple of years ago, my word for the year was forgiveness. You know, how do you know when you forgive somebody? How do you know what forgiveness feels like? Why do you need to forgive somebody? And that was everything. You know, I posted it on Facebook and several times, like, what does it mean to forgive somebody?
Right.
And I came across the forgiveness prayer.
Mm.
And I realized that I had to start not only forgiving others, but I had to forgive myself.
Yeah.
Because when I was 12 years old and I was playing with my Barbie dolls, going to prison was not on my bucket list, okay?
Yeah. No. You and Ken were driving down in your convertible.
Going to prison was like, I don't even know that I knew what prison was as a,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I had to forgive myself for making those mistakes that ended me up in prison.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I just had to forgive everybody, you know, the people that I thought made me make those decisions.
Yes.
You know, if I hadn't have followed this person, that would have happened. Like, no.
Yeah.
It was me. It was my bad decisions. I had to take responsibility. I had to forgive everybody involved.
Yeah.
Several hundred times I had to forgive myself. Which,
Yes.
if you've ever done the forgiveness prayer, oh my God, it's like I think it's like 12 different statements that you write. You know, I forgive so and so, they forgive me. All is well between us. Anything that happened is now over and done with. They wish the best for me. I wish the best for them, and the world is at peace.
There.
And so
So we'll have to add that. I'm not familiar with that version of it. I'm a big fan of the Hawaiian practice of Ho'oponopono, which is based on the same idea. So we will definitely include that in the show notes and put that along for people to practice, because I'm with you. You know, it's a big part of our own personal journey to come to a place of being clean and clear that, you know, we're all human, we're not perfect, we make the choice we make with the information we have at the time, we do the best, and sometimes it's just a bad decision. It's just not smart. Yeah, just on all kinds of levels. What were we thinking?
You know, that they have a saying that nothing good happens after midnight. Okay? So if a friend calls you up and says, hey, can you go for a ride with me? I want to pick something out. I want to deliver something, pick something up.
No.
Guaranteed. It's a bad decision, okay? Don't do it. You know, and you know, and looking back at that now, I'm like, oh wow, you know, I had nobody to blame but myself. You know,
and hindsight gives us all kinds of information we didn't have at the time, right? So, and it is interesting to me how, you know, because I know it was true for me too, many years can pass when we think we've cleared that stuff out, right? That we've gotten right with ourselves. And then we'll discover something else. And for me, a lot of time, those layers get peeled in creative practices, right? They get peeled in my morning writing. They get peeled in some of the healing arts work that I do. When we get invited to take some quiet time and then allow the paints, the paper, the you know, the photography, the pictures, tell a story without our heads getting in the way of it. The emotions come through. And to spend a whole year with forgiveness as your word of the year, Yeah, that's a big E. And obviously it has served you well to continue to move forward and to continue to be able to offer your story in such an authentic way, and to serve all of those people out there who really need that glimmer of hope, to invite them into their own possibilities, which is my hope for the work that I do, right? Is to invite everyone into the possibility of whatever else might be waiting for them. Yeah, because it's a magical place. And if we want to believe that we can manifest anything we put our minds to, then, oh boy, we can have some fun.
Oh, yes. So like for this year, instead of one word, I came up with outside the comfort zone.
Ah, yes.
Everything I'm doing is outside my comfort zone. It might be just a step or two outside the comfort zone.
Yes.
It definitely is. My background is video, photography and video.
Yeah.
I spent years behind the camera.
Yeah.
Now having to step in front of the camera, oh my goodness, you would just not believe what you go through.
Yes.
It's like, is the lipstick right? Is the hair right? Are the nails right? Like,
well, do you want to clue everybody into what it took to get us started for this today?
I know it was 24 minutes before I had the lighting set up, just the way I wanted to. And finally, I was like, listen, we just need to start.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be adjusting lights, and I'm going to be looking at in the bedroom. And it's like, let's just get started.
Let's just go. Let's just go. Yeah. Let's just go. And here we are. And it's been magical. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As always, when we get to this point in the conversation, I want to say, wow, let's just keep going. Let's keep going. And I think for today, we will wrap us up, and we will just commit to coming back to this again. And I think maybe if you're shooting for 30, somewhere at the end of the month, we'll slide in and do another one that we might not roll out for a while, but I think that would be super fun, because there's always so much more to tell and so much more to share about what the creative process in action looks like, right? And that really is my intention for these stories, for these connections. And I hope that everyone who's listening has taken away as many little gold nuggets as I have today. And we'll be sharing all of the ways that you can connect with CeCe, all about her book, the forgiveness prayer, some of the other things that we've mentioned, all in the show notes.
TEDx Speaker.
Yes. So let's take just a minute as we wrap up. How do people reach you, CeCe, if they'd like to reach out to you personally and have a conversation? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Okay.
Under my name, CeCe Espeut. And that's
You're probably like me. There aren't more than one, right?
I did find somebody Cecilia Espeut in France.
Huh?
Like, wow, look at this. But
yeah.
I'm CeCe Espeut. So.
Okay, good. On Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn are your favorite places to play. Yay, good for you. And the book is Florida Clemency Guide. The new one will be waiting for coming out. You want to give us a date?
Oh, wow. My publicist would love to hear that. Soon. Before I come on your show the next time.
Okay.
Copy of the book, yes.
Okay, good. This has been a pure pleasure. As always, such a delight to have these conversations about what happens when you let your curiosity lead, and how it is that we create in our lives, that we play in our lives, and that, of course, every day we live our lives. This is Nanette Saylor signing off another episode of the Create.Play.Live podcast, and special thanks to my guest, CeCe Espeut, for sharing with us her journey. And we will be watching for her on TEDx Boca Raton coming up in October 2018. So bye for now, everybody. Until we meet again, stay curious, my friends.